Ever wanted to disappear off the grid? Jamie makes this possible, starting with a cleared patch of earth and a pile of timber and transforming the raw materials into a fully independent cabin. You'll see the foundation go in, walls raised, systems wired, and water and heat made on site, all by hand. By the time it's finished, this little plot of woods becomes a complete off-grid home and will reveal the total cost of the project at the end of the video. The build began with the foundation. Instead of pouring a slab, too expensive and impractical on sloped land, he chose 6x6 posts. Holes were drilled with a corkscrew auger, set 2 to 3 feet deep with stone and cement, then trimmed level with a saw. For the floor, sturdy wood joists were spaced evenly and supported by a central beam. On top, thick boards were laid down to serve as both the structure and the finished flooring. Before installation, the wood was charred with flame, protecting it against insects and decay while giving it a weathered look.
So again, here's a cross section of the 2x8 logs. And what I did is I ran a 2x2 channel around the perimeter of the cabin and sat the logs down on top of that and screwed that into the platform. This allowed the logs to slide into each other using a button pass system.
The walls followed, built from 3 2x8s glued and screwed together into beams. Stacked tongue and groove, they locked tightly, with screws every 3 feet, nearly 2,000 in total. A front patio was added, finished like the main floor, and window and door openings were cut before being framed in. A central support beam went up, braced for strength, and the pitched roof frame was set. The boards were glued, fastened, charred, and sealed, giving the cabin its first complete skeleton. For the roof, he avoided the complexity of shingles or heavy insulation systems. Instead, a black waterproof tarp was stretched tight, then pinned down with a wooden grid to hold it in place. Corrugated metal sheets went over the top. Simple, durable, and much cheaper than specialty roofing. To prevent leaks, a section of the ceiling was carefully cut for the chimney, fitted with flashing and capped with rain protection. The walls were sealed. Behind the cabin, rubble was cleared to make way for a wood furnace. The stove alone added nearly $2,000 to the total build. Before installing it permanently, he ran a test burn to check the draw and heat output. To brighten the interior, one of the original windows was widened. A chainsaw roughed out the cut, then careful trimming squared it off for a larger pane. The added light gave the small cabin a more open, livable feel. Inside, the attic was divided off from the main living space, creating clear zones that made the interior more functional. Safety came next. Cement boards were fixed to the wall and floor where the stove would sit. This created a fireproof buffer between the furnace and the wood structure. Once the cement base was poured and left to cure, he shifted outside to install the glass windows. Each pane was sealed into its frame, trimmed with charred planks for both weather protection and the antique look he preferred. Back indoors, floorboards were cut and torched before secured around the stove area. Finally, a fresh cement batch was spread on the wall panels, and stones collected from a nearby creek were pressed into it by hand. The finished stone wall wasn't just rustic decoration, it also acted as thermal mass, holding heat from the stove long after the fire died down. Lanterns were hung to light the work at night. Above, the chimney was finalized. Its channel was reinforced with flashing and sealed boards along the patio shed roof, guarding against leaks where rain would otherwise creep in. With that, the furnace corner was complete. The cement, flashing, and sealing materials added only a few $100s, but they were crucial for fire safety and weather resistance.
So here's the gap between the ceiling and the walls, and I'm going to need to build the walls up a couple more courses to get that to tie into the ceiling boards.
Attention then turned to the finishing details. Exposed gaps in the ceiling near the chimney were covered with glue and nailed planks, tying the interior together.
So what I did here is I tied the wall into the ceiling, also secured the rafters to the wall a little bit better as well, so a little added stability.
For the windows, custom shutters were built from glued panels, torched for durability and fitted with hinges. Unlike glass alone, these shutters added insulation in winter and an extra layer of security at night. With that done, the furnace was finally set onto its cured stone base, taking its permanent role as the cabin's heat source and centerpiece. At around $400, it was one of the bigger investments in the interior, but it provided year-long heating with simple wood fuel. Next came the doors. As with the shutters, boards were glued, cut, and reinforced. Precise hinge grooves were carved into the frame so the door would sit flush. Then the surface was torched to match the walls. Reinforcements on the inside added weight and stability, producing a solid, weather-ready entryway. On the far side of the cabin, a sliding door was required for wide access. A heavy beam was mounted overhead, and the paired doors were fitted with hooks to glide smoothly along it. This wasn't just functional, it also set the stage for future expansion, since sliding doors make it easy to extend a cabin without tearing into the frame. Sliding hardware and lumber cost under $200, but offered flexibility that would pay off when the cabin grew. The floors came last. Broad planks were laid, drilled into the frame, then charred for both resilience and the same antique tone seen across the rest of the structure. Flooring is one of the areas that can easily push budgets higher. Here, several $100s in planks were used, but by torch finishing instead of staining, the builder saved on chemicals and preserved durability. A tarp was stretched over the new sliding doors for an added shield against wind and rain. With the structure sealed, the focus shifted to making the cabin livable. The first addition was a multi-purpose bench, built from leftover planks cut and fitted in a corner. A hinged seat turned it into hidden storage, an efficient solution that saved both floor space and money. Hinges and nails added only a few dollars to the build. A table followed, pieced together from more planks and reinforced underneath so it could handle daily use. Store-bought tables of this sturdiness could run into the hundreds, but here it came down to the cost of lumber already on hand. Access to the attic required something equally practical, a folding ladder. Two long beams formed the rails, with evenly spaced rungs glued together and nailed in place. Hinges let it swing upward when not needed, keeping the lower floor clear. Safety was addressed upstairs with a railing of cut beams, ensuring the loft could be used without risk. Finally, a working kitchen corner began to take shape. A smaller table was cut to hold a sink basin, a circular opening made with hand tools. A pipe ran from the basin to a water tank outside, gravity-fed and simple to refill. A tap at the top gave the impression of modern running water at virtually no cost. Above, two shelves were nailed into the wall for dishes and utensils, making the space immediately usable. With these essentials in place, a bench, a table, a folding ladder, and a working sink, the cabin transformed from a bare shell into something warm, efficient, and personal. The sliding door wasn't just a feature, it was a plan. By design, it opened the way for expansion. Outside, a new foundation was dug, and heavy beams were driven deep into the soil. Cross-bracing locked the frame together, a method builders favor for stability in lightweight timber structures. Once the skeleton stood firm, walls rose quickly.
So here's the better way to do corners instead of the button pass system I had been doing on the main cabin shell. Although the way I had been doing them worked just fine, this way eliminates air gaps completely and the need to chink the corners.
Each plank was nailed tight, chosen for its natural insulation and ease of repair compared to plywood or drywall. Openings for windows were measured and cut with care. Mistakes here can compromise insulation and let drafts creep in. With the enclosure complete, the focus turned to the roof, a critical step in off-grid living. Wood insulation was packed beneath the black waterproof tarp, then sealed under corrugated metal. The choice of metal isn't aesthetic, it's practical. It lasts decades, sheds snow and rain easily, and can even double as a collection surface for rainwater harvesting, a system the builder planned from the start. Glass panes were sealed, transforming the extension from a raw shell into a bright, livable space. This wasn't just an addition. It was a seamless continuation of the cabin, built with the same principles of durability, efficiency, and self-sufficiency. Inside, a tarp stretched across the base created a moisture barrier, protecting the boards above it from rot. Sturdy planks were nailed down to finish the floor, giving the room the same dark, rustic strength as the original. But the expansion didn't stop at one room. On the far side of the cabin, the builder marked out another doorway and carved through the wall with a chainsaw. Just as before, heavy beams were planted deep into the soil, cross-braced for stability, and walled in with overlapping boards. A single window was framed and fitted, brightening what would become the most essential part of the project, a bathroom. A pitched roof rose above, insulated with wool and tarp before being sealed in corrugated metal. The design focused on function over frills, starting with the toilet. Instead of buying a pre-made composting unit, which can cost hundreds of dollars, he crafted one from scratch. A solid wooden board was cut with a circular opening, fitted with a seat, and mounted above a floor lined with cement board. Stones were spread across the base, and a cement mix was poured, giving the surface both durability and a rustic finish that matched the stone hearth built earlier. Next came the shower. Where many off-grid builders invest in pressurized RV pumps and plastic stalls, this project leaned on resourceful improvisation. A drain was cut into the floor and sealed, with fresh cement smoothed around it. The walls were lined with metal sheets, cheap and highly durable against constant water exposure. Overhead, a simple watering can fixed to an angled plate became the shower head, a fraction of the cost of commercial systems, and easy to replace if it wears out. For privacy, a curtain was hung, and beneath the floor, a pipe directed wastewater into a bucket outside. No septic tank, no complex plumbing, just a straightforward system that could be cleaned and reset as needed. With the addition of a sink, the bathroom was complete. A fully functional, durable washroom built almost entirely by hand with simple tools and budget-friendly materials. The interior continued to take shape with more handmade furniture. A second wooden chest was pieced together, doubling as both storage and a table. Just like the bench earlier, every plank was measured, drilled, and fixed with screws rather than nails, a habit that defined this entire build. Once complete, the chest was charred with flame, tying it visually to the darkened finish of the cabin walls and floor. With storage in place, attention shifted to power. An electrical setup was installed. Outside, the exposed frame was dressed with wooden cutouts, a detail that not only improved appearances but also helped seal joints. Glue and caulk filled the smallest cracks between boards, closing the cabin tight against drafts and moisture. Then came one of the more practical additions, a bed with storage hidden underneath. A mattress was laid on top, completing a setup that maximized every inch of space while keeping the rustic aesthetic intact. Attention then shifted to the foundation. The exposed base of the cabin was wrapped in wooden boards, each one charred with a torch to match the rest of the structure. This wasn't just for appearances. Burning the surface protected the boards against weather and insects, the same reason he had charred other elements throughout the build. The end result was a cabin that looked uniform from the ground up, with a finish that carried both practical durability and the antique aesthetic the builder was aiming for. From there, the focus turned to finer details. Interior beams were sealed with glue and caulk, closing every seam, while certain sections received a fresh coat of paint. The kitchen was then upgraded. The sink, already installed with a simple water connection, gained a set of cabinets beneath it. Hinged doors were built by hand. Overhead, more cabinets were added, along with shelves supported by metal brackets. Water storage and filtration came next, a vital step for making the cabin genuinely off-grid. Beneath the structure, the builder carved out a dedicated space for a set of tanks. From the roof, a drainage system was installed to capture rainfall. Pipes were fitted, spray painted brown, and a filter was added at the top to trap leaves and debris before water entered the tanks. The tanks were then linked together with a valve system and connected to a filtration unit. This was where the project's practicality really showed. By choosing a straightforward rain catchment system instead of hauling in water lines or drilling a costly well, the builder kept expenses low and the design simple enough to manage solo. In fact, he explained that much of his decision-making, whether in wall construction, roofing, or water systems, was shaped by a balance of cost and feasibility. Once the purifier was added, the system was tested. Rainwater traveled from the roof into the tanks, through the filter, and out as clean, safe drinking water. To take full advantage of the land itself, the builder added one more water source outside the cabin. A plastic tank was cut down and reshaped, then cemented into a spot where water flowed naturally down the hillside. The improvised reservoir was layered with stones, lined with a tarp for sealing, and finished with an outlet pipe. On the far end, clear water trickled out, a simple, gravity-fed system that required no pumps or electricity. With the reservoir in place, the cabin stood complete. Every element, from furniture to utilities, had been built by hand. For less than $30 per square foot, the project delivered not only a rustic log cabin look, but also a fully self-sustaining home with heat, power, and water. And it all came together for about $11,500 in total, including the wood stove and piping. At a time when many off-grid builds can spiral into six figures, this one demonstrated what careful planning and smart material choices could achieve. A comfortable, practical retreat that relied on nothing beyond the forest around it.